Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to r/IDontWorkHereLady, where some people literally think everyone's a worker and needs to serve them, and the stories are wild. And in today's episode, since the holidays are coming quick, and I'm sure many of you will be hitting the airports, it's all about the craziest airport encounters. So yeah, strap yourselves in because it's a wild one. I hope you enjoy the stories, don't shake your heads too hard, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So this happened to me last year, but I just repeated the airport pickup recently, and oh boy did it bring the whole memory flooding back. So a quick background is I'm in my 50s, which logically puts my mom somewhere in her 70s. We look exactly like what we are, mother and daughter, and we sound like it too. I call her mom, and she calls me by an old childhood nickname that no stranger would ever dare. Something along the lines of pumpkin or bunny. You get the vibe. At the time, my mom was pre-hip replacement. She was still mobile, but with limitations. I'm in decent shape, but between the two of us, we're not giving off sky cap for hire energy. We'd be the last people that anyone would expect to sling suitcases around for a buck, or so I thought. And for all who don't know what a sky cap is, they basically handle baggage, strollers, and car seats for travelers. So that said, here's how it went down. The day this happened, I met mom at the airport, got her through baggage claim, wrangled her carry-on, her purse, her checked bag, and her walker, the whole collection, and set her up right out front. She was parked on the seat built into her walker, resting like a queen on a rolling throne. I told her to sit tight while I looped around to get the truck. I pull up outside baggage claim and I start loading mom's bags into the truck bed and behind the seat. Meanwhile, mom's having a cheerful chat with a woman nearby. The woman looks younger than me, and she's dressed like she's fresh from a business meeting, wheeling her own suitcase, and she seems harmless enough. And then it's time to load mom into the truck. I pull out the step stool that I brought because plan ahead, and help her climb in, buckle her seatbelt, and fold up her walker. I'm just about to go around to my side of the truck when I feel a hand tug my sleeve. Cue the professional business travel lady, aka the Karen. She gives me this pleasant, expectant look and she says, "Hey, when you're done with that lady, can you help me next?" At this, I blink and I say, "Oh, that's my mom." The woman's just giving me a blank stare, so I continue on and say, "So I'm taking her home." At this point, I start trying to walk away, but then I see her waving something at me. It's money. The woman's trying to tip me. I just say to her, "I think the sky caps are over there," pointing down the sidewalk. Now, this is a small regional airport. We're talking like 2 sky caps max. Usually one wrangling bags and the other coordinating taxis over walkie-talkie. They wear actual uniforms and there's signage. But that's when she says, and I remember this crystal clear, "Yeah, I saw them. They're all busy." And she just keeps standing there, still waving the bill in my face, like I'm going to suddenly accept my fate as a baggage handler. I just smile and say to her, "Well, you should probably get in line then," and walk off. Back in the truck, mom and I have our conversation. She thinks the woman might have been a little off. I suggest maybe it was a long flight, travel brain, or whatever. But then, plot twist. My mom tells me the same lady gave her $1 earlier to wave down a cab for her. So yeah, let me paint this for you. A well-dressed, capable woman handed my mother, a 70-year-old woman sitting on a walker, $1 to go summon her a taxi. I'm honestly a little disappointed that my mom gave the $1 back. Yeah, so apparently from this post, all it takes to start a side hustle at the airport is a step stool and helping someone into their car. Like, jokes aside, the entitlement guys, holy moly. Like, the woman said she knew OP and mom weren't workers, and she still thought that waving a few dollars in their face would make them follow orders, which is ridiculous. And in my opinion, I think anybody with half a brain would not go to a 70-year-old lady sitting on a walker to call a cab for them. Like, what in the world? And this person shares a comment that says, "This happened last year when I was picking up my sister at the airport. Her flight was delayed, so I grab a coffee and I sat near the arrival gates, just scrolling on my phone. Out of nowhere, a man in a full suit comes up to me and he says, "You're late. The shuttle should have been here 10 minutes ago. Where's your name tag?" Hearing that, I looked up confused and I said, I don't work here. Well, apparently, that was the wrong answer because he snapped, "Don't you play dumb. You drivers always pull this. Get up and get the shuttle." At this point, other people were staring. I just hold up my coffee and backpack and I said louder, "Sir, I'm literally waiting for my sister. I don't drive a shuttle." The guy starts huffing, puffing, and muttering about lazy employees. And that's when an actual shuttle driver who's in uniform with the logo on his shirt walked up and he said, "Sir, I'm your driver. And she definitely doesn't work here." The man just turned beet red, grabbed his suitcase, and stomped off without another word. The driver then gave me a wink and said, "Happens more than you'd think." It made my whole night. So a few years ago, I was working at the airport. Not for an airline directly, but for a ground handling company. Basically, we handle check-ins, baggage, and gate services for a bunch of different airlines that didn't have their own staff. Now, the main airline in our country had a dedicated team. It's easy to spot by their matching uniforms that look like the cabin crew. The rest of us, we wore generic uniforms and often became accidental customer service reps for airlines that we had nothing to do with. We were used to it. The passengers would come up confused and we'd point them in the right direction. Sometimes, we could even help if they just needed a gate number or directions to the check-in counters. But then, there was her. It was the summer travel rush, and I was mid-check-in for Airline X. It was a flight that was full, slow-moving, and full of travelers from all over the world with different documents and lots of luggage. I was stationed at the far end of the check-in row, since I'd be heading to the gate once things calmed down. That's when I noticed a woman approaching out of the corner of my eye. I figured she just wanted to use the luggage scale, so I just call up the next family in line and start checking their passports. And then she stomps right up to my counter. The woman snaps and says, "Excuse me." I give her a quick smile and I say, "Oh, I'm sorry, the end of the line is back that way." At this point, I just assumed she was a passenger on my flight. The woman says, No, I'm flying to this city with Airline Y." I respond, okay. She then says, "I need you to check me in. My flight leaves in 30 minutes. Now, I'm still helping the family in front of me, but I politely tell her, "I'm sorry, I do not work for that airline." At this, she went full meltdown. She then screams at me and says, "Well, call someone then. Where are their staff? They can't just leave their desks empty. Didn't you hear me? My flight's leaving in 30 minutes, so you help me right now or I'm gonna miss the flight." I then explain, if your flight leaves in 30 minutes, check-in's probably closed. But Airline Y does have a ticket desk downstairs, and you might still catch them. Now, I knew the airline closes 45 minutes before departure. This wasn't the first time that we've had to tell Airline Y's passengers about this, but usually they just accept their fate after hearing we don't work for them. But this woman, she wasn't having it. She continues screaming and says, "What? I have to get on that flight, so call someone right now." Again, I try to calmly explain I don't work for them. I don't even know who to call. My job is to help this line right here. Well, at this point, if you thought that stopped her, you thought wrong. That's when she throws her bag onto the moving belt and she screams at me saying, "You take my bag then." The belt was actively running because I just sent off the previous family's luggage. I had to lunge across the counter in heels and grab her bag before it disappeared without a tag. The bag was so heavy that I nearly toppled over. I then said out of breath, "Ma'am, I can't send your bag without a tag." She then screams and says, "Then tag it, idiot." I respond, "I can't. I don't have access to Airline Y's system. I can't even check if they accept last-minute bags." The woman then gestures wildly at the check-in area and she says, It's the same damn belt. The desks are right there. All of your computers are the same. So just take my bag or I'm talking to your manager. At this point, she's yelling loud enough that my coworker's on the phone with security, and my supervisor comes over to see what's happening. Meanwhile, I just finished checking in the family, and they wished me good luck as they left. But I can't help the next passengers because this woman has parked herself in front of my counter. The woman's now yelling how I'm drunk on power and denying her basic customer service. This is when I pull up the flight monitoring app, the one that shows boarding statuses, and I say, "Ma'am, your flight's been at final call for 10 minutes. You're not gonna make it." At that, she was stunned, and she said, "You know that, but you can't check me in. Are you stupid?" Meanwhile, my supervisor is now actually on the phone with the company that handles Airline Y. They then get off the phone and confirm, yes, Airline Y closes check-in 45 minutes before departure, which this woman had clearly missed. And this is when she goes full toddler tantrum. Now we have to listen to the lady absolutely lose her mind about how no one told her and she'll sue all of us. The woman starts stomping, slapping the counter, kicking her bag, trying to force it onto the belt like somehow brute force would magically check her in. This is when security arrives and escorts her a few steps away, but she's still yelling how both Airline X and Airline Y suck. How we're so incompetent and how she works in tourism and she knows exactly how all of this should work. She even claimed to personally know the CEO of our company, and she swore that we'd all be fired within the week. As she was being escorted away, I couldn't help myself. I leaned over the counter and I called out, "Our CEO doesn't work for Airline Y either." My supervisor gave me the hush look, but I know she was trying not to laugh, and no, I didn't get in trouble. I checked in a few more passengers and then head to the gate, just in time to see Airline Y's plane push back from the stand, right on schedule. Honestly, I'm sure we've all seen enough videos of airport freakouts to know that doing what Karen did is not gonna make things any better. Like getting loud, throwing tantrums, all that stuff is the quickest way into the back of a police cruiser, not on an airplane. And this person shares a similar story of a Karen missing a flight. So this took place recently. I had my first real-life Karen encounter. The setting was an airport administration building just across the street from the terminal. The cast is me, an airport IT field engineer who's definitely not an airline employee, the Karen who's dressed in a black sundress, sandals, and juggling two giant handbags, and my coworker, the innocent bystander. I'm walking from the main admin building over to the terminal for a service call when this woman is standing around looking very lost. Trying to be helpful, I say, "Ma'am, the terminal is on the other side of the garage." She replies, already flustered, "But I need to get to Southwest. My flight leaves at 7:15. I check the time and it's 7 o'clock. I think to myself, yeah, she's probably not getting on that flight. But I try to keep her calm and I say, well, that's quite the time crunch. Southwest is across the parking garage and then across the street. You should go to the counter. They can help you rebook if you miss it. The woman just glares at me and says, well, that doesn't help. She then storms off down to her car like she's gonna drive there faster than we can walk. And spoiler alert, she doesn't. By the time my coworker and I walk across the garage and reach the bridge to the terminal, Karen suddenly comes sprinting past us. She's huffing and puffing, and she's shouting, "You could have helped." Hearing her say that, I'm confused. Like, helped how? With teleportation? So I say, "I'm sorry, but we don't work for the airlines. There's nothing we could have done." That's when she stops dead in her tracks and she says, "But I'm a customer. You should have helped me." The woman then flips me off and I just shrug and I said, "There's really nothing I can do for you. Have a nice day." She then fires off one more dramatic line as if to get the last words in and she says, "How do you sleep at night with this?" Without missing a beat, my coworker says, very soundly, "Have a nice day." The woman then storms off towards the southwest counter, and it's now 7:10. We head off to our service call, and about 10 minutes later, we walk past the southwest desk. And we see Karen. She's sitting on a bench, arms crossed, and face like she's about to murder someone. The flight was missed. Attitude still intact, and blame, I hope not still on me. We walked past her without her seeing us, thankfully. But in all my years of working with the public, this might be the funniest case of instant karma I've ever seen. And definitely the first time I've ever been cussed out for literally not working for the airline. So back in college, I worked part-time at a duty-free store in an international airport that mostly served French-Canadian travelers. This was pre-9/11, so airport procedures were a little more relaxed. One of my regular tasks was to make last-minute deliveries of duty-free items, stuff like booze, cigarettes, perfume, directly to passengers at their gates, or even on the plane just before takeoff. Since I was part-time and seasonal, I didn't have a uniform. Instead, I had to dress nicely, and I had to wear a lanyard with a giant federal ID badge that said I passed a background check. Over time, most airport employees got to know each other, so I was pretty recognizable around the terminal and on the employee shuttle. With that said though, my boss had a bad habit of cutting things way too close to departure. That meant that I was constantly sprinting to planes with orders in hand, trying to beat the clock. On my second or third run of the day, I'm rushing towards an Air Canada flight. I know my belt buckle will set off the metal detector, so I strip it off mid-run and I toss it to my security buddy, like we've done this a dozen times. I make it through, hop on the plane, and get a few chuckles from the flight attendants who recognize me. They tease me about my boss being greedy. They said, "Your boss is cutting it way too close again." Every time. They then send me to deliver the orders, but I can't find the passengers, Jake and Farah, not their real names. While I'm calling out for them, a passenger asks me for a pillow. I open the overhead bin above his seat and find one and hand it over. And that's when another passenger asks for one, and another. I then give the usual, "I'll see what I can do," and keep opening bins as I search for my actual customer. Turns out, this flight had a real pillow shortage because suddenly everyone wants one. At this point, the plane's delayed and Jake and Farah are still missing. I start thinking that maybe they skipped the flight, or are deaf, or even worse, dead in the terminal somewhere. Then, one lady asks for a pillow, and when I tell her I'm actually not a flight attendant, she says to me, "But you found pillows for the others. Why not me, huh?" I start trying to explain again, but she slips me a $20 bill and she says, "You are such a good stewardess." At this point, I decide, for $20, sure, I'll find you a pillow. I'll steal one if I have to. So I head to the back of the massive plane, still hunting for my passengers and a pillow. As I round the corner near the bathrooms, I feel the plane start taxiing, and I'm thinking, oh no. At that exact moment, the bathroom door opens and a man steps out. I ask, "You wouldn't happen to be Mr. So-and-so, would you?" And right behind him, a woman walks out. They're just the two people I'm looking for, fresh from their very long bathroom break. The mystery is solved. I hand them their order and they thank me sheepishly, clearly aware of how awkward this is. The guy then tips me $50. I'm just standing there in shock, literally holding more cash than I had in my bank account at the time. And that's when I realize we are really moving. I'm not supposed to be going to Canada. So I sprint back up the aisle, toss the pillow that I found to the sweet old lady who tipped me, and start shouting to the flight attendants I need to get off this plane. They have to abort takeoff so I can leave. Well, they had to abort taxiing to the runway so I can get off. It's not as dramatic as having to abort a takeoff. And honestly, it was totally worth it. I got tipped $70, delivered all my orders, and I walked off that plane feeling like the world's richest non-stewardess. Honestly, this is the most glamorous case of I don't work here that I've read in a while. Like, OP stopped a flight, scored $70 in tips, solved a mystery couple's disappearing act, wink wink, and also became the unofficial pillow fairy of Air Canada, all in a span of what, like 20 minutes? That said though, my only question is, with the flight attendants knowing that OP was on the plane, why did they not inform the captain that someone was on the flight who shouldn't have been? But yeah, pretty wild what happened, right? And OP's got an awesome story to tell for the rest of their lives. So I work part-time at a small airport in Germany as a security and visa agent, mostly for the US-bound flights. It's a good gig, it's interesting, flexible, and I genuinely enjoy helping people out, if they're polite. Now, to paint the picture, we wear blue slacks, white button-ups, and ties or scarves. The maintenance staff, they wear bright orange. We do not look alike. It's honestly hard to confuse us. Anyways, I was at my desk, prepping to board a flight to Miami. There was a public restroom directly behind my station, and just as I'm checking a few final things, this huge man walks out of the bathroom, makes a beeline for me, and with a smirk on his face, he says, "I need help." I smile and say, "Of course, what can I do for you, sir?" And then the smell hits me. It's a wave of something unholy wafting from the restroom behind him. I keep my game face on because customer service. And then the guy hits me with this. He says, "I need you to wipe up the crap in the bathroom." At that, I blink and I say, "Sir, I'll call someone from maintenance right away." But no, not good enough for this guy. The guy scowls and he snaps at me and says, "Stop being lazy and do your damn job. I know you work here, so go get your cleaning supplies and start cleaning." At this point, I'm a little less jolly, and I say, "Sir, I'm not maintenance, I'm a visa agent. But as I said, I will call someone to clean it." At that, he loses it, practically yelling at me now, saying, "Go do your effing job, right now." And that's where the customer service mode officially shuts off. Now, I'm not security police, but I am a trained security agent, which means while I can't physically remove someone, I can deny them entry onto a flight if I believe they might pose a risk. So I look at him straight in the eye and I said very calmly, "Sir, please stop using that language. I will make sure the bathroom gets clean. But if you continue behaving this way, I'll have to deny you boarding today." And just like that, he goes red, like cartoon steam coming out of his ears red. I was half expecting a blood vessel on his forehead to pop. And then he doubled down. The guy growls at me and says, "Wipe it up. I want you to." Now, I didn't even flinch. I just gave him a smile and I waved to the federal police officer stationed nearby. I told the officer that I was denying this passenger's flight due to security concerns and that he needs to be escorted out of the secure area. To the guy's credit, he actually went without a fight. He was still red, still fuming, but he was silent. The rest of the flight went smoothly, no delays, no drama, but seriously, who walks out of a bathroom and tries to verbally assault a security agent into scrubbing toilets? Wrong person, wrong uniform, wrong lifetime. What a despicable human being that was, and seriously, what a weird way to power trip over someone. And seriously, I've said this before, like even if OP was maintenance and had access to cleaning supplies, that's definitely not how you talk to anyone. I hope he got a dose of instant karma and was banned from flying with that airline. Even better, I hope he was banned and he had to come back to clean up his own mess. A few days ago, I was between flights at a pretty small airport just grabbing a cup of coffee. I was in my flight attendant uniform and sometimes people approach me with questions. Now, I try to be polite and help where I can, as most airport questions are easy enough. So that said, this woman walks up and she asked me where the smoking area is. I'm not a smoker, and honestly, I've only been to this airport a handful of times. I respond, "A smoking area? I think I saw one near the Dunkin' Donuts, but I'm not really sure if there's one over here." The woman immediately gets this look in her eyes, like I just personally ruined her day. The woman says, like, way over there? That's the other side of the airport. Are you seriously telling me that there's nothing closer? Like, what kind of lousy flight attendant are you? I'm thinking, lady, it's a tiny airport, but I keep my cool. I respond, honestly, ma'am, I mostly work out of Minneapolis. This airport's a bit foreign to me. Maybe try asking the gate agents or someone at the coffee shop. They might know better. The woman did not take that as an answer. She screams and says, no, I'm asking you. You should know this. You're a flight attendant. Why are you being so useless? At this point, my coffee arrives. I ask the barista casually, and he points out right in front of us, about 50 feet away, is the smoking area. So I tell the lady, oh, it's literally right there. And just a heads up, flight attendants are not airport employees, so I don't always know this stuff. Well, instead of cooling down, the woman practically starts shaking, and she says, what? So you lied and you tried to send me across the entire airport? What kind of job are you doing? I swear some people should be fired for this. Learn your damn job, a-hole. The woman then stomps off towards the smoking area, muttering loudly under her breath. The barista and I just look at each other like, did that really happen? We then share a quick laugh, and honestly, I did my best to help, even though I technically have no idea about airport layouts. And she still treated me like I was personally responsible for ruining her nicotine fix. Some effing people. Yeah, some freaking people is right. Like, the fact that this woman made no effort to even look around already makes her dumb, but then trying to blame OP for making her walk across the airport, I don't even know what to say. Some people are literally insufferable. Like, flight attendants get enough hassle in the air as is, and to deal with a Karen who's bugging them on the ground as well is not cool. And this person says, airline pilot here. Nothing but respect to flight attendants for the unreal attitudes they have to endure on a way too often frequency. No disrespect meant when I offer that most pilots are extremely glad to have that flight deck door close. Now, that being said, if this exchange had happened on my airplane instead of in the terminal, that lady would have been bounced from the flight so fast it would make her head spin, because no one treats a crew member like that. Yeah, it is always nice to know that pilots won't tolerate that BS. And before we go, a pilot shares their I Don't Work Here Lady story. So as an airline pilot, I've seen my fair share of passenger nonsense. Seriously, something about airports makes people temporarily lose all common sense and just be stupid, for the lack of a better word. Here's a recent gem. So after 4 exhausting days on the road, I'm finally at the airport, ready to catch my commute flight home. It's been a long day, and I have zero patience for people at the moment. Also, sometimes I fly on competitor airlines, which means I have to check in at their counters and deal with whatever chaos is going on. Unbeknownst to me, the competitor just canceled their Orlando flight. Thankfully, my flight is still good to go. Cue the usual drama, screaming soccer moms, crying kids, and all the chaos you see on viral videos. I'm just minding my own business, earbuds in, music on, savoring the brief moment of peace. And then this woman, who we'll call Miss Sweat Hog, approaches me. Picture stained sweatpants and a tank top, smelling of cigarettes and zero personal space boundaries. The woman comes up to me and she demands I help her get to Orlando. I calmly tell her I don't work for Airline X, talk to the gate agent, and then turn to walk away. But that's not good enough. The woman follows me, demanding my supervisor's name like I'm some kind of travel concierge. Now, after days away from home, again, my patience is thin. So I give her the pilot version of F off. I tell her I don't work for them, I don't care about your trip, and leave me alone or I will call security. With that, I stroll to my gate and board my flight, leaving Miss Sweat Hog to stew in the Orlando chaos. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our I Don't Work Here Lady. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/entitled people episode, where a psycho Karen neighbor keeps stealing some packages, and it doesn't end well for her. Guys, go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.